Welcome to CMR Interviews by Jason Shapiro. In today's episode, Jason interviews Oliver Kell on how he became a full-time trader. To learn more about Jason and Oliver, check the episode notes in the description.
All right, today is the 7th of February in 2024, and I'm Jason Shapiro with Crowded Market Report, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Oliver Kell, who is a successful stock trader, and I like it because he trades equities, which I don't do as a futures trader, and he is, from what I understand, he'll explain more, but he's kind of more of a momentum equities trader, which I'm also not a momentum trader. So hopefully we can all learn a heck of a lot about trading equities momentum-wise from somebody who has done it pretty successfully. So Oliver, thanks for coming on and welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'll just say this real quick. When I looked at your background a little bit, we need to get you and another guy that I interviewed a few months ago, Darius Dale, and we have the makings of a pretty good offense. We have the beginnings of a pretty good offense, from what I could tell, because Darius was a great offensive lineman.
Oh, all right. Yeah. I mean, I love good offensive linemen, you know.
That's what I'm saying. So we get the two of you, find 9 more guys, and we can get something going.
Yeah, right. Good alignment make life, a million times easier.
I would say so, yeah. He's also a really good guy and a really smart guy. So so why don't you tell us a little bit about, your what you want to say about your background and what led you to this this life of lunacy, and then we can get into a little bit how you approach it.
Yeah, so I mean, kind of my career trajectory or whatnot is I originally, right out of college, I went and I prop traded at what I would basically consider to be, a modern day bucket shop, type of place. You put up 5K, you get to trade their capital. But once you bust your 5K, all of a sudden you don't get to trade their capital. So I did that right out of college. I was going to make millions of dollars, all the stuff you think when you're, 22 years old. And I lost like half of my account or whatever, that, I don't know, 2 or 3 grand. And I realized that, I had no idea what I was doing. So I just stopped doing that. And I ended up getting a job at, what I would consider to be more of a legitimate type, I guess you could call it a prop firm, but it was a group of like 5 or 6 former prop traders that went out and they started their own fund, I guess, but they were basically trading their own book. And I got to be an assistant for 2 of the guys, and they did international arbitrage. And it was cool because, one of my mentors, I would say, was like very attracted to risk, like definitely more of a swinger. And the other guy, he'd be down like $1,000 and you'd think like the world was ending. And he pretty much made money every day, but was just like so conservative. So I kind of got to witness or see kind of both mental approaches. But that fund went under. You can probably use your imagination as to why or how. And then I went and I worked at an institutional brokerage where I traded for, big institutions, just basically executing their orders. People who didn't want to hire an internal trader, we would basically trade their book. So I knew their positions, I knew what they were trying to do, and it was eye-opening. I understand how bases are built. I've bought like hundreds of thousands of shares of the same stock every day for months, stuff like that. And the whole time I was kind of trading just my own account. And then from there, I got into sales in various capacities, mutual funds, then software. And I just traded my own account the whole time, and until I had enough money to, go out on my own. And now I just trade for myself. And that's been my career trajectory, I guess. But as far as how I was, introduced to the market, so my dad was a market maker. on the PSE. So, I guess you could say it was sort of the family business. We would go into the floor when we had half days of school and watch the close, stuff like that. Um, so my sort of view on the market was always like the floor, all the excitement and all that. But I also, I got to see some of the, bad sides of trading. My dad blew up twice and, wasn't necessarily the best situation. Um, but so, I'm not naive to kind of I guess I don't really like see Lamborghinis and Ferraris like a lot of people, unfortunately I kind of know how brutal the market can be.
I got mine right here, man.
Yeah. Um, but and then when I was in college, really the last thing I wanted to do was do anything involving trading, just because. Um, but I didn't really know what to do, and I had a buddy who was a year older than me, who I was pretty good friends with, and he was prop trading, and I don't know, he sent me some books. I started reading them, and next thing I knew, that's what I was doing. So, and now here I am, what, 15 years later. So that's pretty much my story.
Cool. And I guess your big claim to fame was at one point, I forget which year, 2020 maybe, you won the U.S. Trading Championship, which is a real money trading championship.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Made like 900% or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good market.
I don't know if I've made 900% in my entire freaking career, quite. Um, if I did, I lost it all 6 months later.
Yeah.
But that's cool. So why don't we get into, from what I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I think that you're a follower of the whole Ken Slim method. Is that correct?
So I mean, I'm like I mean, William O'Neill definitely introduced me to more looking at charts. I would not say that I follow the can slim strategy.
Okay.
Uh, but I trade growth stocks. Typically I like to trade, kind of more liquid names that
Hmm.
are momentum names, on the highs. And then is what do is I use the 10, 20 period moving average to just kind of be an objective overlay on whatever I'm trading. And then I'm basically just looking to trade higher highs and higher lows. So if I find something in a trend, I try to trade the trend until it's not a trend anymore. And I try to use the 10, 20 period moving average to just help me be objective. That's in a nutshell, more or less what I do. And, there's some intricacies to that, but at the end of the day, I mean, that's what I do. So
So do you long and short, or are you primarily long?
I will short, but I'm probably like 90 as far as where I've made money, probably 99% to the long side.
Sure. I would have to agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So then let's focus on how you're looking to do long. We don't really have to get into short since you don't really short. You're looking for a stock whose 10-day moving average is above the 20-day moving average.
Yeah, or if it's like setting up right underneath it, I like to
Getting
buy.
ready to cross.
Yeah, like I like to buy out of, I call them bases, but not I don't think in the way, a can slim trader would. I'm looking for like mini bases, maybe like like 5 to 10 day kind of tight range. And if we can take it out, I like to get long and then just try to basically I use the weekly, the daily, and then I judge, the higher highs and higher lows on the 65-minute chart.
Hmm.
And I just try to stick with the trend.
Right. So it does sort of a breakout, comes out of this base, 10-day crosses a 20-day, you're getting long.
Pretty
And,
much.
and as long as the thing is sort of continuing with higher highs and higher lows, you want to ride it.
Exactly. And when things get too stretched, I like to take a little off just to kind of, you know, if I have to give a ton back to my stop,
Right.
I might take a little bit off, but overall I try to ride it until I see like a clear indication that, hey, you should sell this thing. Like, a big reversal bar or just like
Right.
just insane, just like a pure insanity, like I'm probably gonna just take my money.
Too far away from its moving averages or something like that? Or is that a systematic thing, or is that just kind of a feel thing?
It's sort of a feel thing, and I see people who try to systematize it, but I think a lot of I think each stock in a way has its own personality. So,
Mhm.
one stock where, 10% of like, Apple might get 5 or 10% above the 10-day, and that's really extended. Whereas another stock might be, 10% is like, an afternoon.
The day's play.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think you got to take into account, the stock and its personality when you're doing that stuff.
Okay,
And
so
the market and the environment. Sometimes, obviously lately the market's been very conducive to holding positions and giving them more room. Whereas, in a less advantageous tape, you want to be booking profits more quickly. So, I think
sure.
that's a huge thing.
So you're using quite a bit of discretion on a lot of this stuff as well, in terms of
Yeah.
how the market is trading in your view, and which stocks are conducive to being far above the moving average, which ones are not.
Yeah.
Um,
But I trade a lot of the same stocks. Like I know some people run a lot of scans and their universe is like thousands of stocks and
uh
then you trade all these different, I'm trading a lot of the same names, and in reality, I am not the person who's building like a 20 position portfolio. I've actually found it's much easier for me to manage my risk when I have, a lot of money in a couple names. So, lately, kind of probably the last 2 years, Nvidia has been the stock for me. It's been the name to trade because it's liquid, it moves, and it shows relative strength to the market. I
a
mean,
little bit.
yeah. So why should I trade anything else when I can just focus on that? I mean, I have other positions. That's not
Why
what I'm
should
saying,
why
but
should anybody trade anything else for that matter?
yeah,
So you caught the Nvidia move.
yeah,
So why don't we kind of go into that a little bit? I don't want you to give up any of your secrets or anything you don't want to tell me, but if I'm looking at this Nvidia stock, um, I guess we'll talk post 2022, right? So we
sure.
could argue Nvidia kind of started to break out in the first quarter of 23.
Yeah, so I really got on this thing. I want to say it was 1.6 or 1.5. Just, when I look at the weekly chart, it had, a higher low there on the weekly, and then I got to go back and look at the daily, but I remember it had like a 5 or 6 day mini base on the daily. Yeah, it had a
Hmm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It had 6 days tight, and it traded up through the 10-20 EMA.
Hmm.
And I guess this is 1.6 and 1.9,
Hmm.
and then you can just see it followed the 10-20 period moving average just higher. Like that's what it did. I mean, it
It just went.
it just went. And like, for this whole move, I didn't hold this whole move. I took a couple different trades in it, but some multi-week, multi-month trades. And it last year, this is where I made over 60% of my money was in Nvidia. Um,
So you get long this stock on whatever, early January, because it's breaking out.
yeah.
And how do you handle things like where do you trade with stops?
Yeah.
And how do you handle your sizing? How do you decide how much you want to size in that? Is that a formula, or is that a feel, or
So I mean, like I generally try to risk, no more than 50 bips, when I put a trade on.
50 bips
Sometimes,
of your portfolio?
Yeah. But I will, buy, and if it moves up a little, I will add and raise my stop. So I will get pretty big positions, but it's dependent on like how I'm able to buy the stock. If something just like absolutely rips, I actually don't like that. I'd rather something go up for, maybe 2 or 3 days and then go sideways for 2 or 3 days. And then I can buy more and raise my stop. So basically, maybe I have twice as big of a position and I actually have no risk on it, assuming I don't have a huge gap down or something. Uh,
Right.
that's the best case scenario for me, because then if it does work and it continues higher, I have a big position, but I haven't taken on, an enormous amount of risk to get on that big position. That's really the ideal scenario for me and the goal, with all my trades.
Hmm.
Whereas if something just absolutely explodes, I probably won't get as big of a position, and I'll just kind of let it go. Because at some point, I don't want to be adding to a name, too late, unless it kind of resets up again and builds me a new mini base, then I will. I did that in Nvidia this run. I bought another position after I had already scaled out some of my first position. I bought a second position under 600 because it gave me another opportunity. And then I scaled out a little bit of that second position here, a couple nights ago at, 700. And then now I have two good positions, and I haven't updated everything yet, but my stop as of yesterday was at 636, which had both positions in the money, and I can just kind of let it do its thing,
Six
until
thirty six is some kind of moving average that you use as your stop, or
636, basically the second mini base. So I started my second position on 2-1, and we
Mhm.
pushed out, and we gapped up and finished, near the high of the day. And I call that an ignite bar, where
Mhm.
just basically like a good move, a nice bar on good volume, the type of thing where I wouldn't want that entire bar to be lost, or it's just like a negative sign to me.
Right.
That's where I put my stop. And then just as things happen, as we go up, we pull back and we reconfirm higher. That's what I call it. I'll adjust my stop higher, as the stock moves higher. And that's like literally what I do. It's not that complicated in reality.
Not really rocket science. Buying a breakout, trail, and a stop.
That's pretty much what I do.
Buying a breakout, let it consolidate. Buy the next breakout, maybe add to your position. Buy the next breakout, trail your stop.
That's it.
Classic kind of momentum trading, which
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
works great, in particular in a bull market, right?
Yeah,
Which we
absolutely.
are in more than we are not. I
I
think
would say I hate the terms bull and bear market. I would definitely say we're in a bull market, but I would just say we're in an uptrending market. The
that's it.
market's moving
That's it.
higher,
Yeah,
and it moves higher until it doesn't.
that's right. And then you get out anyway. Um, so you're never really going to get out, it sounds like, on highs because it's going to pull back and get you and take you out.
So the only way I really get out, into the highs is if we have like an obvious blow off. Um, and that's actually what I hope happens with all these positions, because it's a lot better than getting stopped out into weakness.
Sure.
Uh,
How do you define obvious blow off? I mean,
I
people have been
mean,
calling Nvidia an obvious blow off for the last 250 points.
I don't really think Nvidia is a blow off personally.
No, I
I
don't either, but
Yeah.
people could make that argument because they certainly have.
Well, yeah, they have. I mean, I sort of look at Nvidia here as it just broke out of a 6 month, what I call a stage two base, which is, sort of from William O'Neill.
Hmm.
And you usually get 3 or 4 bases before a stock, kind of a leading name type stock like Nvidia is, to me, is
Right.
really going to have a real top. And so sort of when I look at this, is it just seems to me that it's under consistent accumulation pretty much day to day. I mean, Nvidia hasn't even touched its 10-day moving average at all. I mean, this stock every day is getting accumulated. Like when I look at my 65-minute chart, which is sort of how I manage positions, it goes up. So it has what I call expansion. It moves up quickly and then it goes sideways in tight trade. And
Right.
then it goes up quickly. And then maybe it pulls back, but it hasn't had any distribution
No.
really at all. You could say it had some profit taking yesterday morning. But that was literally the absolute first sign of any form of profit taking, the way I interpret things this
And
entire
then just ripped
week.
again today anyway. But like, how about, well, let me ask you this in a few ways. So you're long Nvidia,
Yeah.
and I'm glad you are, because I think you're the first person I know that is actually long Nvidia.
And I
And
mean, I have a
everybody
lot of
I
money.
know, everybody I know wants to short Nvidia every
Well,
fucking day.
I think it's going way higher.
Okay, so you think it's going way higher,
Yeah.
and that's awesome, and I hope it does. But so here we are. It's at 700,
Yeah.
701. Okay. What changes your mind or forces you to change your mind? Like, in other words, if we open up tomorrow at 850, are you getting out?
Uh, Man, that'd be a good chunk of change. I'd probably take some off because
Just because it would be ridiculous.
the 10 days at about 650, so we'd be about 30% above the 10-day if that were the
Right.
case. And just in my experience, 30% above the 10 days, probably where you want to take some Nvidia off.
Right. What about if we open up tomorrow at 620? What do you do?
At 620, I'd be out because my stop's 636.
Okay, so there we go. So your
Yeah.
trailing stop is there. You're not violating that one way or the other. No
No.
matter what you think about Nvidia, it hits 636, you're out. And then
Yeah.
you'll sit there, and this is something that obviously you trade a lot. So you'll sit there and you'll wait until you get whatever you need to get back in the thing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not trying to sit through like a 6-month basing period or whatever.
Right.
When this thing stops trending on the 10-20 period moving average, I'll just get out and I'll
Right.
wait to set up again.
So during that period from, I guess it was like, let's call it, I don't know, July of last year up until like kind of the November of last year, which is
Yeah.
what, August, September, about a 5 month period.
Yeah.
Were you not involved in that whole move at that point? And
I was trading it a little bit. I fortunately sold this really well. And so I had signals to get short when we lost the 10-20 period moving average, but it just kind of didn't go down that much. And so I ended up basically getting stopped out for minimal gains. I think I made like 4 or 5% after sitting in it for like 3 weeks, which
right,
for me is like not what I'm trying to do. And
right,
and then I think I got long and same deal. It had like no power and same deal. It just like sucked.
yeah,
Um, and then I was literally short when it broke 400 and I was wondering if it was going to sell more. And I actually literally got long that day. Um, and then it looked really good. I was pumped about it. I was pumped, but I took a little off before earnings in the third week of November, and then
hmm
I held the rest and I ended up getting stopped out at like 470, and it sucked because I really thought it was maybe for real. But and then I actually got long again at like 475, like I don't know, like a month later. And
right.
I was thinking,
Yes.
okay. So like, I just had a bunch of trades that just didn't really amount to much. I had some losers in there for sure. But net I made a little progress, but not a ton. And then now I caught this big trade, and that's basically how it works for me is you know I I stay involved and I just interpret things as best I can. I do the best I can just based on my moving averages and how I trade, and some of the signals work big and some of them just sort of are crap. Now I will say when I'm in that kind of range there, I never really got those opportunities to add and get big on my position.
Mhm.
Um, Whereas in this current run, the way that we set up and the way that things built, I was able to get a pretty sizable position. Um, and that's really kind of the difference is when it worked, I had a really big position. And I just, like I'm not sitting here saying I wasn't frustrated during that basing period. I had trades that I thought, when I got this thing at 400, I really nailed my entry and I was feeling really good about it. And it just, it worked. Like, don't get me wrong. Like looking back at it now, it looks like it barely moved. But at the time, it had moved like 100 points in like 3 weeks, and I was
Right.
feeling pretty good about it. And then, in the other half of the position, I gave, 40 points back. It sucked. But that's
I mean,
just like how it
it's
goes.
kind of the nature of the beast of based on how you're trading, momentum trading, right? There'll be times when it's not momentum and you'll get maybe, tossed around a little bit.
Yeah.
But then as long as you're being disciplined and catching the momentum and adding the momentum and the momentum continues, that's kind of your job. I always say that with my trading, right? People are like, well, why aren't you think you're bullish. Why aren't you long? You're bearish. Why aren't you short? I'm like, because it's not my job here to do that. That's not what I do. Okay. Just because I'm
Yeah.
bullish doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be long, right? That's not my job. Your job is, well, I mean, you just want to make money because it's your money.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, your job is to trade momentum because that's what you want to do. So as long as you're catching the momentum when it's happening, okay, you get whipped around a little bit when it's not happening. You get stopped out if the momentum dies. But in the meantime, if the momentum's going, you're riding it and you're making a crap load of money. So
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I mean, that's it.
yeah, I mean that's really I don't care how you trade. That's what it is to me. I say it again and again and again all the time. That's what it is. Make a lot
Yeah.
when you're right, lose a little when you're wrong. That's the name of the game, right? Be wrong, lose a little, be right, make a lot, and then just let time pass and keep doing that, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think as I get more experience, really at the end of the day for me is the goal is to make as much as I can when things are going well and then not mess shit up too bad when things are not going well. Like
Right.
that's it. Like
How do you handle when things aren't going well?
I mean, I'm handling it better than I used to.
I mean,
I
you're a competitive guy, you're an athlete. You
Yeah.
know what I mean,
I'm very competitive and
yeah,
I can really beat myself up like
yeah, I
when
would
things aren't
think,
going
yeah,
well. And I think the key is to like trade small, when things aren't going well to trade smaller, and just smaller and smaller and smaller until you get a couple trades going and then you get your confidence back. I mean, that's basically it is to trade smaller when you're losing. And
it's funny
um
because your P&L will tell you, like for you, for example, from what you've just told me, if you're losing, it means that the momentum is just whatever, farting around, the market's going
yeah,
up and down. So you're losing. So therefore, that in itself tells you that this is not the time to be heavy momentum, right?
yeah,
It automatically shrinks you.
exactly. I mean,
And
I
then,
call it
and
the
then when you're
P&L.
making, it's the opposite, right? When you're making, it means the momentum's coming back. So now there's time to get big.
Exactly. Yeah. But
So,
then when you're making too much,
right,
no,
clearly.
don't, you gotta stay actually one of the best lines I learned from that bucket shop is there was a guy on the desk who he'd been in the game a long time. And he would always say, he'd have a huge day. And, when you're 23 and you see a guy, making like 50 grand in a day or something, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah,
Uh, and you're like, oh, like, how'd you do it? Blah, blah. And he was this Russian guy and he would just say, oh, you got to stay humble in this game. Like,
it's a fact.
like the guy never was very high and never very low. And,
Yeah,
that's key.
that's a fact. You got to stay humble in this game. It will humble you, even, one way, whether
Yeah,
you like it or not, right?
for sure.
Well, That's cool. You do other things outside of trading too? You go to the gym, blow off steam.
So my wife's always on me to go to the gym. I've recently started working out again for like the first time in a long time. And I love working out. I just, I don't know, I just wasn't doing it. But I work out. I
How
like
old are you?
I'm 36. I like to play basketball. That's actually really what I like to do. When I lived in the city, there's some pretty good runs at some of the local courts. So I would like doing that. And then I actually grew up sailing. So
Huh.
I competitively sail. I got a boat out on the bay in San
Oh, cool.
Francisco. Yeah, a couple of my buddies, and my dad. And so that's probably my main kind of hobby that I do.
Keep it
Um,
up, dude. I'm telling you now, man. I'm not your dad or anything, but I'm 56. And if you want to know what happens if you don't do any of that stuff for the next 20 years, here it is. You don't want this. Okay. I sit here in front of these screens and I never did like exercising anyway. But I'm telling you, I'm a fucking mess, man, when it comes to health because I lost, I sit in front of the screens for 30 something years and I fall into that habit and
Yeah,
now my health sucks, quite frankly. So you're a young, healthy guy. Keep it up. Plus, it keeps your mind. I end up doing a lot of mind things. I meditate. I do
yeah.
that to keep myself straight with all this. But I don't know if my wife can hear me, but I should exercise. She's on me all the time. But
No, my wife is in great shape and is very serious about it all. I
yeah,
had to hide all the junk food that I have next to my desk when we turned on the Zoom.
yeah,
But yeah, I
I,
need
I
to do a better job taking care of myself, and then some of like the mind stuff, meditation and stuff you do. My wife is like a breath work coach or
oh,
whatever,
good.
so I do that stuff with her. And it helps me. Like as much as I for a while hated to say I do that stuff or whatever. I mean, it helps me for sure.
Oh,
It
yeah.
helps me relax because I'm a pretty intense person.
No, I can see. I mean, I don't. I couldn't exist without some form of mind relaxation.
Yeah,
I've
I
been doing.
believe it.
I've been doing that for a long time, and that's the only thing that I think keeps me even half sane. Because I don't exercise and I don't really get the endorphins going like that. So to me, that's important. Are you involved in SMCI?
I have a position in SMCI. Yeah, I would say SMCI. Well, one, I had a pretty good sized position in an SMCI, and I got shaken out the day before I bought it recently. But then it went so quickly that, I didn't get as, I don't have as big a position as I have in Nvidia, not even close. And that would be an example of a name that just explodes. I'm not going to get as much stock. I'm just not. But
But
yeah,
you're
I
still going to
still
make a
own it.
shitload of money when the stock doubles in a day or
Well,
whatever.
yeah, I mean, SMCI has definitely been good to me.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I think SMCI is yeah, it's extended here, but I see people calling for this thing to like crash, and I don't know. It hasn't even made a lower low yet, so I think
Yeah.
it'll probably
It,
make a
it, it,
lower low before it crashes.
it certainly it has to by definition, right?
Yeah,
That's what people don't get at all. I'm like, I just did a video this last week where I'm like, look, if you want to be bearish, man. That's fine. But let the market tell you something first. You know what I mean? Whatever it is. If it's a lower low that tells you, well, then wait for the lower low before you get bearish. Like,
yeah,
I say this to people all the time, man. Like, I get it. The things have gone up a lot and I get it. You missed them. So you want to be short. You know what I mean? But that's no reason to be short, man.
yeah, exactly. I mean, when I look at SMCI has not even touched it. Well, I guess on the daily chart it has, but I put the 5-day moving average on my 65-minute chart.
Right?
It hasn't touched it this whole rally.
Hell
Uh,
no. How could it? It went straight
yeah.
up.
But I personally, and this now is my opinion. It's not like what's actually like happening because it hasn't happened yet. But when I see a stock like this, I think this stock is more likely to consolidate a little and then go higher than
One
to
would think.
crash.
Yeah, no, one would think. You don't look at all at fundamentals. You're not trading these stocks because you have, or maybe you are, but because you have this opinion that, what do they call this thing? AI is going to take over the world and is going to be the greatest invention in the history of mankind, and therefore that's why you're involved in these stocks.
So like I am not the guy who is like looking at the fundamentals saying, hey, I'm definitely not the guy looking at like price to book and all the value stuff.
Sure,
I
sure.
am looking at earnings growth and sales growth. That is one thing. So I like companies with good growth, specifically revenue growth.
So the companies that you're picking to trade, which you said are not very many, first have to have that. Is that right?
I mean, I don't like scan and filter for that. Really the way that I find a stock is if it has big volume. If I see big volume, then I start to do a little more research on the company. Um, and then sort of the way I think about things is like in themes. So like AI to me is obviously the biggest theme right now. That's what's hot. Now, do I have some big opinion on AI? No, not really. But AI is the theme right now. So like, okay, which companies are play up to that theme? And when I bought Nvidia in January of 2023 or whatever, I really didn't have a clue they had anything to do with AI. I mean, I knew they were a semiconductor. Am I sitting here pretending like I know exact? I mean, I know semiconductors are on computers or whatever, but I'm not sitting here telling you that I actually have a clue.
Yeah, I
Uh,
love it. That's how I am too. I trade commodities and I'm like, I'll get long bean oil. I'm like, I don't even know what bean oil is, man. Quite,
yeah.
I mean, all I care is if it makes me money.
Exactly. But so then I and now that things are a little more mature, just because I've been trading them, I have a little more of a sense like basically the way I think about it is okay, Nvidia has the chips, SMCI has the servers you put them into. AMD is kind of number two in the chip space. This stock VRT, which unfortunately I haven't really been able to get right. They make the cooling gel to keep these towers cool because they have so much processing power. So like I'm cognizant of the big picture, but I'm not sitting here getting so caught up in every little detail. And part of the reason being is I don't want to have too strong of an opinion on it. I just
Right.
want to be able to trade my system.
Hell yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. I love that. Your opinion will screw you up, right?
And I know that because it has.
Right. No, also a great point, right? That's where you learn, right?
Yeah.
That's beautiful, man. I love it. This guy makes a bunch of money doing what he's supposed to do and not getting confused by outside shit. I
That's
love
that's
that.
the goal, I
He
would
sticks to
say.
his
That's
risk
the goal.
management. He tries to let his profits run. He tries to get out of his losses quick, trails his stops, forced to get out no matter what he thinks, and then maybe can re-enter and doesn't let the bullshit get in his freaking way, right?
Yeah. I
He,
mean,
he's not going to say Nvidia is overvalued or whatever. If the stock
no.
is going up and he's long and it's going up and going up and going up, he's riding the fucker to make
Yeah.
money, man. He doesn't care that the PE went from 30 to 40 or whatever the hell, right?
Well, yeah, and I've been doing this long enough, and one of the great things about William O'Neill's book is people look at the can some strategy and they quote the strategy, but really all that book is a study of the biggest winners in history. That's actually what it is. It's
That's
a
right.
study. And you know someone actually asked me on Twitter the other day, what do I think of high PEs? And I said, oh, I love them
Right.
as long as the stock is growing. Because why does a company get a high PE?
Because
Because
they're
the
growing.
market thinks it's going to grow.
Yes.
So Nvidia right now, and actually I couldn't tell you what the P's are. I don't know. But I'm I'm at risk of looking like a fool here, but I'm pretty confident the PE in Nvidia is significantly lower right now than it was in January of 2023.
It
Uh,
probably is because their earnings have gone up so much.
exactly, which is a trademark of a lot of the biggest winners in history,
And
is
for
that
a lot of people that don't know, William O'Neill is a legend. I think he died. He passed away last year, maybe.
I think so, yeah.
Wall Street legend who wrote a book, and he created this system called Ken Slim because all the letters mean something. And he based it, as Oliver was saying, on he looked at what were the biggest growing stocks in history and what did they have in common. And he found things like they had obviously huge earnings growth, right? but on top of huge earnings growth, what I always thought was interesting, and I'm no expert, but I just know him from, I did read his book years ago, but he was in the original Market Wizards too, which is one of my favorite books, which is what got me to him. But he found that the momentum of the stock had to be like in the top 5% of all stocks before he would buy it. Right. So you have this great earnings growth. That's one thing, but then he's waiting for the market to confirm that by
Right.
showing that there is huge momentum in the stock. Right. So
Yeah.
here's a stock that is saying, hey, we've got huge earnings growth and our stock is starting to go up relative to the market. Let's go. And
Exactly.
there's a little bit more to it too, but that's in general what he's doing, right? So
Yeah.
you have two things on your side. You have great earnings growth, which is a good way for a company to grow, clearly, and you have momentum. And I would recommend William O'Neill's stuff to anybody trading anything, but in particular, if you're trading stocks, I would certainly recommend that. And there's been a lot of successful people that have done that. I did have a conversation with the guys at his firm a few months ago, who work for the asset management division of his firm. And they semi-admitted to me that it's become a little harder, the pure Ken Slim method, which makes sense to me because so many people have realized how good it is, right?
Yeah.
That something has to be arbed out, right?
I'm
So
sure. Yeah.
for example, okay, so they're waiting for this breakout. And then they put their stop in, whatever. I think he does like a 7% move against him is his stop. So a lot more times it's breaking out heavy because everybody sees it. And then
Right.
it has this 7% drawdown and everybody gets stopped out. And then the
Right.
brick and rolls, right?
Right.
Then it rips, right? Which is normal because so many people, something's so good. And this is a guy who printed a book about it and has an entire newspaper about it, right? Investors Business Daily. That sure, people are going to find it, and you just have to adapt a little bit, I guess. It sounds like exactly what you did.
Yeah. So like I don't subscribe to the paper or anything. But I have in the past, and they'll put like traditional buy points, like breaks out to a new high or something. And I'm often in well before those breakouts.
Right.
Just because of how I get in, I'm typically in before.
Yeah,
Um,
you've changed your definition of the breakout compared to what their definition is.
Yeah, exactly. Like sometimes people will say, "Hey, this is breaking out," and I'm like, "Oh no, it's extended, or it's it's not breaking out." At least how I you know go about things, um, and really that all sort of happened via trial and error for me, and really just not making money for a long time, and then figuring out like, "Hey." Really is what I did is I went back and I studied, Apple and Baidu were kind of the two big names when I first started trading. Kind of like, the last couple of years, it's been Nvidia and Tesla. It used to be Apple and Baidu. And I just went back and went through them all with the 1020 EMA. And I like studied, when did the actual move start? What happened that led to it starting? And, that's it. And then to just kind of elaborate, actually, to better answer your question, kind of like how do I pick stocks? Like, do I run fundamentals or whatever? Really, the main thing I look for is massive volume. Like I look for huge volume. And then a lot of the times I will find the stocks that have massive volume signatures. When you go look at the fundamentals happen to be pretty good because
Imagine
that's
that,
why
yeah.
a lot of people started buying them.
Right.
Um,
Why do all that research when you can let the market do research for you?
that's
You've got
basically what I do.
you've got 800,000 analysts out there that can find this stuff and it shows up in the tape. So
Exactly.
you don't even need to do the work because they're all doing the work.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really say I look, I sort of look at fundamentals because I'm sitting here all day and I'm bored and I need some stuff to read.
Right. Right. Does news and in particular reaction to news events matter to you at all? If Nvidia comes out with great earnings and the stock gaps up and closes down on the day, do you say, "Oh my God, that's not very good," or anything like
Yeah,
that?
yeah, absolutely. So actually, like, something I was watching this morning, which actually I'm so not really interested in the sector, I didn't look at it. But the solars, I'm not really interested in the solars. the P&L indicator has not turned up on that sector. So I'm not even really paying attention to it. But one thing I noticed in the stock ENPH, which if I'm going to trade the solars, I typically like to trade ENPH or First Solar. You know, those are kind of the two that I like to trade. And this thing has just been clubbed. I mean, it's really, really, I mean, I think it's gone from 339 down to maybe it went to 75. And it reported earnings last night and they revised their guidance down. Not the best look, right? But the
Right.
stock was up 17% today. And guess what? It did a massive amount of volume. So am I going to run out and buy this stock? No. I mean, it's below the 200 period moving average. I think it probably, if I had to guess, needs a couple months of consolidation. But that's kind of like you know, it's down a ton, and it is off the lows. And now they report these earnings that, you know, they revise their guidance down. Like that's not a good thing. And the stock goes higher. So that's just something that I'll be aware of. You know, I still don't think that this is where I want to put my money, but you know, maybe with a little more time, it'll be basically maybe the worst of the news for this thing is priced in, and you know now it can repair and maybe set up long. You know, so yeah, I mean, I
I mean,
look
that
at
looks a lot like we haven't had it yet, but that's a possible higher low and lower high thing coming up here somewhere. I don't
well,
know what.
yeah. So like when I look at this, like when I just look at I guess the weekly, you know, we made the lows in around 73-ish or whatever. And, you know, this week could be a higher low. Just in my experience, basically from this bear market we just had, you know, you can see all these names that are starting to turn now.
Yeah.
But when they had those huge sell-offs, they needed, you know, 6-8 months to really base even once they bottomed. So I would imagine this will probably be choppy, even if the lows are in. And you know, I want to trade it when it's ready to go. So you know, but it's kind of like out of the complete doghouse now where I'll probably check in on it, you know. But you know, I'm not ready to trade it yet. But
How
that,
did
you
your
know,
whole thing work? And let's call it the second half of 21 and 22.
so
Because sort of
21,
starting the second half of 21,
yeah.
I would say
So
that started to become the death of momentum stocks for a
y-
while there.
yeah, exactly. So the beginning of 21 was like the biggest 2-month period
Right.
I ever had.
Sure.
Um, and then I was basically a beta trader the rest of 21. I caught a big move in October, which was basically I caught three stocks, Nvidia, Tesla, and AMD. Um, but you know, I had a lot of false breakouts and
Right.
other things along the way that beat me up. And catching that move, you know, allowed me to basically be a beta trader. But it didn't go great. It was tough for the way that I traded.
Like how bad, and you don't have to tell me this, but how bad like would your drawdown get?
So
Because that was
2021,
probably,
I
I would,
was
from what I know, which isn't much,
yeah.
but that would have been probably the worst period for this type of trading. The second half of 21, I would have thought would have been hell for this type of trading.
Well, so 2021 was tough because you had a lot of false breakouts.
Yeah.
Whereas it would have almost been better if the market just went down.
Right.
But the false breakouts was tough. That catching that October move, because I don't trade like 15 stocks,
Right.
you know, I was able to get three stocks that moved and allowed me to make money in that October period.
Hmm.
2022, I fortunately in the first quarter caught the downtrend. And I actually did great in Q1. And then Q2 and Q3, you know, I started to get chopped up.
Yeah, it was a mess.
And I gave back all my Q1 and just started trading smaller and smaller. And then fortunately, you know, around October-ish, and even when the market bottomed in October-ish, it's not like I was doing that great because in reality, what was I trading? I was trading Microsoft and Apple because that's what was going
Killing.
up. but those names don't really like fly.
Tough for
Uh,
Microsoft to go 400% in 6 months. Yeah.
yeah, so um, basically I did well in Q1 and I gave it all back. And I was actually right on a lot of the moves in the market and still lost money. Um, and it was my first bear market. I'd never been in a market that just,
No, that's why I'm curious as
back.
to how bad it all got for you. You clearly didn't lose 100% of your money, which is great because you stayed alive, for
Yeah.
this. And this is your time, right? But I
Well,
mean,
this is my time. So I
was it
gave
like
gave
30,
back,
50? Like what was your worst peak to
like 25%.
which is
Uh,
nothing compared to the returns that you're getting.
well, I mean, it was a lot for
I
me.
mean, it was a lot clearly for you to go through, right?
Yeah.
But you must have made that and more just in the video. Fucking hell,
Well, so like the thing that was terrible for me is, uh, at one point I was trading so small, that it was basically just sort of it didn't really matter what I was doing. I was trading so small. Um, but it was just like 2 quarters basically where I was just not doing anything good. And mentally, that was what wore on me. Like it wore on me a lot. Like I was pissed off like every day, like even just literally every day. I mean, I was so unhappy. Um, and in going back and having gone through that, I would have just like gone on vacation. And but I
Well,
didn't.
you
I
learned
didn't.
a lot. Like I said, it's your first bear market, that they come and you learned a lot and you'll be prepared for the next one. I mean,
Well, yeah,
this is
like I
what this
actually
game is
think
all
it's going to
about.
prove to be the biggest year for me, of my career. Because look, like I traded through like 18, not even close to a bear market, piece of cake. At least for me, I was just like out of the market.
Right.
Uh, COVID was like when people call COVID a bear market,
Yeah.
like give me a break.
It was 6 weeks
Like
long.
it was like 4 weeks, and
Yeah.
like it happened so quickly
Right.
that like by the time
Right. By the time you figured out you need to get out, it was all the way back up anyway.
yeah, so those were those were, I mean, literally like COVID was easier than like a standard 5 or 10% correction, because like it wasn't even choppy, it was straight down and then
Yes.
straight back up.
Yes.
um but I think probably the big thing I learned is like, I think probably more important than like any kind of quote unquote breadth indicator or whatever. And I use the 10-20 period moving average. But when the 50 period moving average is turns down, your chances of catching any real type of move, and I'm talking on like the index, um, you might as well just like chill
Wait.
out. Or like you're gonna have to have the skill set to catch like 2 to 3 week moves, which like I do think I have that skill set with how I trade, but it's not how I want to trade. And so it just made me frustrated. When you're given, even when you catch a good trade, when you don't sell it perfectly and you're given half back stuff like that. Um,
Bear
yeah,
markets are very, very tough.
yeah. Hey, it was a
Not
humbling.
just because the market is going down, but because traditionally bear markets have many, many false starts. You get it's down
Exactly.
and then they rip and it looks good, but it's false. And then it goes down and makes a new low, and then it rips and it's false and it goes down. I mean, bear markets are painful. And I warn people about shorting the stock market for a lot of reasons. Um, but that being one of them, because even if you get it right, it's freaking impossible. You know what I
Well,
mean?
so
Because
like
you're
that's what
going to
I
catch a
was. Yeah.
50% move down in the stock market because you're short. Well, there's in between that 50% move down, there's going to be 4 or 5, 25, 30% move
Yeah.
ups. So you're going to get whipped. So you ain't going to make money anyway.
Well, like that's what I was saying, where like I had a lot of like the moves right
Right.
in the bear. Just like the nice thing about the way I trade is you actually can catch these moves in these types of markets. But
Sure.
it's like I would get long and things would look good. It would have like a 1 day shake and then would like gap up 4% and go. Uh,
Right.
so it like did enough to knock me out and then went. and then the moves were what, like 3-4 weeks. So it's like you really had to nail the entry. There was no like for example, in this market, right? We've basically been rallying now for going on 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were able to like build positions and hold them and make progress in your account and buy new positions, right? Whereas in the bear market, at least from my perspective, it's you had to nail the turn and then get out and get short at the turn. And then like you basically had a couple day window, 1 or 2 days to kind of make your move. Um, and if you didn't nail that window, you're kind of better off just kind of waiting a month or two to try to get the next window. Um, which you're better off waiting for a market like this where you can make, real money. And look, I'm not saying you can't make real money in a bear market. I mean, I know a guy who can't make money in a bull market, but
Well, that's why he
absolutely
makes money
cleaned
in
up.
bear markets, right? It's one or the other.
So,
Well,
yeah.
that's cool. I think there's a lot of lessons here for people who want to be momentum traders. Some of the very specific things that he talks about in terms of the moving averages and and the 50-day moving average for the index, and when it's below, that's obviously going to be a lot harder time. I think these are all very, very important points for momentum trading, and momentum trading, I don't do it, but can be great provided you can, just like all trading, provided you can do a decent job of avoiding the times when it's not working and capitalizing and maximizing on the times when it is working, which it sounds like really more than anything else, Oliver is not doing anything magical here. He's the first one to say it. He's not doing anything super special, right? But what he's doing is he is minimizing, and he's learning as he goes because he just had his first bear market or whatever, but he's learning how to minimize his losing when that stuff isn't working, right? Which is done by, hey, he's getting stopped no matter what. Nvidia, he loves Nvidia, okay, as he should. Um, Thing gaps down 75, 80 points tomorrow, he's out, man. Doesn't matter how much he loves it. He's
Yeah.
out. The risk management, man, right? And in the meantime, he's riding and as a momentum trader, adding in the right situation to positions that are working, right? Adding to his winners, riding his winners, cutting his losers. The rest, to me, no matter what kind of trading you're doing, is bullshit. Okay. Um, but it sounds like he's doing a great job of that. Where can I just have to cut you off because I think we only get an hour on this thing. I could talk to
Yeah.
you for hours, but you want people to find you, and if so, where can they find you?
I mean, I'm on Twitter. My name is One Chart Six, and then I basically just write, a newsletter more or less with like my thoughts, basically what I'm doing, at theswingreport.com. And that's, don't try to find me anywhere else, please.
Don't go to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
All right, well, awesome, man. I really appreciate the time. This was really cool, and I wish you continued success with this whole thing. I hope that you're riding NVIDIA up to 1,000. I really do, because
I
I want
I
to
hope so
say
too.
that I personally know somebody that did. Okay, because I don't own any NVIDIA. I'm not a stock trader, but I could own it in my 401k if I had any balls. But I have been many videos. I have actually specifically said, stop fucking shorting NVIDIA. Okay, you got to stop.
Yeah.
And it's because I like to read mass psychology type of thing, and all I hear is people shorting NVIDIA. Everybody I know
Yeah.
shorting
It's
NVIDIA, shorting NVIDIA.
unbelievable.
And I'm just like, you have to stop, man. Yeah, like I get it. You don't
Yeah.
have to be long, you know what I mean? But you got to stop shorting it, right? And I say it today could be the top for all I freaking know. Okay. I
Yeah,
don't,
good.
I don't know what the future brings, but you can't just short new highs every freaking day, man. It's the exact opposite of what you're supposed to be doing. It's the exact opposite of what you do, right?
Yeah.
You're buying strength and letting it work for you. So it's just good to know someone that actually is telling me that they've been riding this, because I swear to you, and I talk to God knows how many people just on my Discord, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that are in the markets. And I don't know a single person riding the video. So now I can say I do, and
Yeah.
I'm glad. So it's been a pleasure to meet you, man, and great talk. And I hope we can keep in touch and catch up again. I'd
Yeah,
love to get you
absolutely.
back on here on if and when it ever happens again in our lifetime, if the S&P pulls back 20, 30%. I'd love to catch you then, and we can probably learn a lot from how you handled that and all that.
No, yeah, I mean, I'm not looking forward to that, anytime soon, but I'm looking forward to it at some point.
I don't know
I
if
really
it's ever going to happen again in our life, but let's see if it does.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, man. Hey, so I just wanted to say, after thinking a little bit about this conversation that I had with Oliver, to me, the most important takeaway is I get a lot of people asking me, hey, Jason, I want to be a full-time trader. What should I do? Should I go get an MBA or CFA and then go work for a hedge fund and do it that way? And I'm always like, that's one way to do it. But I mean, look at what this guy did. He decided as a kid that he wanted to be a trader. Okay. He went and worked for, what he called a bucket shop type of prop shop, put up $5,000. Lost half of it, which was probably all his savings, all the money he had, and was like, oh my God, and left. Took the last couple $1,000s he had and probably paid a month rent and whatever, got a job in the markets so that he was still involved, learning how to do some block trading or something and still trading on the side, saved up money until he can go back and trade for himself, which he did. And then he started making some money, and now here he is, however many years later, 15 years later, and he's still doing it. And that's how he did it. And so what I'm saying is, if you want to really do that, if you really want to be a full-time trader, there are ways to do it, and you better be ready for the roller coaster of it all and have a backup plan in place and all that. But as soon as the guy saved money again, he went right back to it. That's what somebody who really wants to be a full-time trader of life does. So I thought that was the most important lesson in there more than anything else. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks.
Subscribe to the Crowded Market Report YouTube channel for more CMR interviews and other content from Jason.